The FBI said today the terror attack in San Bernardino, California, was not directed by any groups overseas. Instead, they say the attackers, Tashfeen Malik and Syed Farouk, were inspired to carry out the massacre. The two killed 14 people and wounded 22 others on December 2nd. But there are 18 minutes of those actions that they have done that have gone unaccounted for. Now the FBI is asking the public for help to fill in the timeline.
Why is that 18 minutes critical? It's critical because it's possible, again, possible, that they stopped at whether it be a storage area, a residence, a business. It's possible there was a contact made. We just don't know. It very well may not be an important fact, but until we close that gap, we just don't know for sure.
CBS News Justice reporter Paula Reid is in Washington. She has been covering this case from the very beginning, and she joins us now. Paula, how important is it for the FBI to reconstruct those missing 18 minutes?
It's incredibly important, Vlad. The FBI needs to sort of close the loop on this and determine where these individuals were during those 18 minutes. That's why they're pleading with the public to please come forward if anyone saw them. They want to know if these two shooters made contact with anyone during that time, if they took shelter at any sort of residence anywhere, or, as the FBI noted there, if they potentially had a storage locker or any other space. They need to know what happened during those 18 minutes to determine whether or not there could potentially be anyone else involved in this plot. Anyone else who is potentially involved in this terror attack, this deadliest terror attack on U.S. soil since 9/11.
Speaking of anyone else involved in this plot, Paula, remind us again what is going on with Enrique Marquez. He was the friend of the attackers who purchased some of those weapons.
Last week, Vlad, Enrique Marquez was indicted on 5 charges related to guns that he transferred to one of the shooters. That 2 of them were used in the attack, as well as his involvement in a previous plot where they planned back in 2012 to carry out a totally separate attack where they wanted to attack a school and actually throw some pipe bombs off of a highway and then shoot individuals who were on the road. Now, the most significant of those charges is a material support charge. Most of the evidence that supports that charge came from Enrique Marquez himself. He spoke with investigators for quite some time without a lawyer before he was actually charged. And there is a concern that a judge could potentially suppress his statement. And without that statement, they don't have sufficient evidence to support the material support charge in that case. So there's a lot of concern with sources that I've spoken with that the case against Enrique Marquez may not fully stand. Now, even if the material support charge is dropped, they still have gun charges and immigration charges against him. But again, the big charge there is material support for terrorism, and all the evidence came from Enrique Marquez himself. So it'll be up to a judge as to whether or not that evidence can be introduced. Mr. Marquez will be arraigned tomorrow in California.
So, Paula, if I understand correctly, because Mr. Marquez was interrogated without that attorney, that whatever he told those investigators, that may not be admissible. And I guess the question that probably a lot of people who are not lawyers are going to have is, how does the FBI and other law enforcement officials conduct some kind of an interrogation like this, knowing that this could possibly happen?
Well, he's fully free to talk to them. They're fully free to ask him questions. But depending on the circumstances of the questions, of that interrogation, of what transpired between law enforcement and Mr. Marquez during that time, a judge is going to have to assess how that evidence was extracted from him, whether or not it was fair, whether or not it was all above board. Also, Mr. Marquez's mental health situation. A lot of factors will need to be considered. Now, the officers are fully within their rights to talk to Mr. Marquez. Mr. Marquez is fully within his rights to talk to them without a lawyer before he's been charged. But there is a lot of concern about whether or not all that evidence, that trove of information that they gave him, whether or not that will be able to be used against him at trial. And without it, the material support case really falls apart.
Wow. Well, and Paula, you recall that one day where all of us in the media were observing the FBI sort of searching through this body of water, nearby lake, looking for what they said was a hard drive. Did they ever say if they found anything?
At this point, it doesn't seem that the lake search really yielded any significant evidence in this case. However, as you might imagine, any electronics that were submerged in water for that long are compromised. Now, they also obtained some information off of cell phones, but at this point, there doesn't seem to be any smoking gun, and certainly nothing that's really giving them concrete evidence of what was going on during that critical 18-minute period.
Paula Reid in Washington. Paula, thank you very much.